Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. It is the Wolfman, and it is 1:01 p.m. on Wednesday, the 21st of February, 2024. I want to talk to you about the nature of reality. I have a picture, and it's compressed, and I want to take it out, and I want to juggle it, and I want to put it on display, and I want to bring it back together and compress it and put it back in my pocket. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is truth and communication. And of course, I've mentioned this before, but I need you in the right mind space for this discussion. I need you to understand that words are never truth. I need you to understand that words are symbols. The reality of a word is that it is a vibration in the air that means nothing. It is no different from birdsong or monkey chatter or the vibrations that come from a drum or a guitar or a flute, a wood flute, a bagpipe. It's just noise. But we have assigned meanings to them, and we have a collective agreement on what they mean. That's fine. Getting a little too excited there. I'm going to calm myself down. That's fine. But the word water will not get you wet. And so the truth that I see is like an invisible man that only I can see. And the truth that you see is like an invisible man that only you can see. And words are like paint. And so in my head, there's this truth. And I'm going to throw enough truth at this. I'm sorry, I'd like to throw truth, but it seems at this point I can only throw words. And the word water will not get you wet. And the word fire will not burn you. And you can't plant seeds in the word dirt unless you construct the word out of a symbol made of dirt. Anyway, in my head there is truth, and it's like an invisible man that you can't see. And so I'm going to take these words and I'm going to splash them on the invisible man until you can see it. And some of the paint will get on the floor and the walls, and that's okay. So if the words don't land, let them go. I'm not attached to the words. I'm attached to the truth to the degree that I can be. So that's words and communication. I'm going to talk about symbols, which I just did. Let me tell you the rest of it in a nutshell. I'm going to talk about words and symbols, words and communication. I'm going to talk about 3 levels of reality. The symbolic, conceptual level, the perceived level, and fundamental reality. I'm going to talk about the divisibility of reality, whether it's all one, whether it is all of these infinite things that we see around us, or whether it is 2 beings in the universe, just self and other, me and you. And then I'm going to briefly touch on practical application. Heads up, I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to fix your life. That's up to you. I don't have a solution for you. I do have information that I will hopefully bring out in this display that will give you a new view of things. And maybe, just maybe, that new view of things, if you are concerned with the problem, will give you a new way to look at the problem so that it becomes more solvable. So we already talked about words and symbols. Don't take my word for it. If it doesn't feel true to you, then it's not true, because I'm trying to show you the truth. And if what I'm showing you is not truth, then just let it go. As Ram Dass would say, let the words quiet your mind. And let's just sink into a space and go on a little journey. So the 3 levels of reality. Now, there are, of course, many levels of reality. There are infinite levels of reality. But the 3 that I find the most useful, that I intend to talk about right now, are symbolic reality, which I already talked about, conceptual reality. I use these terms interchangeably. Symbolic reality, conceptual reality, it's the same thing. It's made of words. and it's made of thoughts and concepts. It's what we think about reality. Um, then there is perceptual reality. Okay, and we move from conceptual reality to perceptual reality. And this is often like coming up for air because we've been in these stories, and in the spiritual community, conceptual reality gets put down a lot. And there's a good reason for that. That's because a lot of the suffering that happens comes because we're lost in our concept, and we have forgotten that perceptual reality and fundamental reality even exist. And we think that the world of stories and concepts is the only thing that there is, and we suffer. And that's not necessary. So it's good that everybody's out there trying to get you out of your head and into your heart and into your sensations, because it does. It feels like relief. It feels like coming up for air to get out of the concept and to get into the perception. So you have a concept that you are watching a YouTube video and that I'm a person, and maybe you have even forgotten that you're watching a YouTube video and you're just listening to a person. But that's not real, is it? It's really, you're looking at a screen, and the screen is replicating a person. You're not watching a real person. You're watching a very convincing and accurate facsimile of an event that we assume really happened. Although with AI, it's getting harder and harder to verify that these videos are real. If you've never met me in person, you can't really trust that I'm a real person, because very soon, if not already, they'll be able to generate something as convincing as me, as intelligent as me, and you won't be able to tell the difference over a phone screen. Through the filter of a phone screen, you won't be able to tell the difference, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, you have a concept of what you're doing, but you can look at your phone and you can say, what is it really? Or your computer screen, if you're watching this on a computer or television. You can look at your screen and you can say, we call it a screen, but what is it really? And then don't answer that in words. Perceive it. And know that the experience of perceiving the sounds that you're hearing, the sights that you're seeing, the weight of your body in the chair or on your feet where it touches the earth, the taste in your mouth, the smells in your nose and in the room, the other sounds that I'm not putting into this video that are just generated by your ambient noise wherever you are. That's what it really is. And that's perceptual reality. You can easily get into perceptual reality by just looking at what is and sensing it. Okay, it's just I think I've explained it. Perceptual reality. So you've got conceptual reality, which may involve things such as the future and the past. You know, this happened to me, and that's why I am the way I am. That's a concept. Reality, you are the way you are. Why is a concept. It's not part of that layer of reality. I'm not saying, again, I do call the conceptual layer of reality a layer of reality because it is real. Because the things that you think change the biochemistry, the chemical, electrical goings on inside of your actual fleshy brain. So can a thing that isn't real have an effect on a thing that is real? Coming down to the definition of reality at that point, and words aren't the truth. So it's really neither here nor there. So there is a layer of reality. It's the stories that we live in, they're real. They're real to us, and they have a real effect on perceived reality. So then there's perceived reality. So there's the stories that we tell about things, and there's the things that we think about things, and the things that we say about them, which are all part of the same layer of symbols and concepts and thoughts and words. And then there's perceived reality, and it's like over here we have the ability to grasp at fundamental reality through thoughts and concepts, and over here we have the ability to grasp at fundamental reality through perception. Both of these things can be fooled. You certainly know that you can think things that are incorrect. If you don't know that you can think things that are incorrect, you at least know that people around you can think things that are incorrect. I'm sure you've witnessed people thinking things that are not true. Um, and you can perceive things that are incorrect as well. Optical illusions we know of. You're sitting at a stoplight next to a large semi truck because the way the brain is wired to perceive motion is relative to the large objects around you. So the mountain is stationary, I'm stationary in relationship to the mountain. And when I move, I know that the mountain has stayed stationary, and so I sense my motion somewhat visually within relation to my distance to the mountain. Um, a semi truck that is close up enough is large enough to trigger that part of the brain. And so you're sitting at a stoplight, the semi truck is in the turn lane, it comes to a complete stop, it sits there for a while waiting for a break in traffic. You subconsciously decide that it is part of your surroundings now and not an active um, player in the game, not something that moves. You don't realize that you've made this decision, but you have. And then the thing starts rolling forward to make its turn, and you have a little panic attack as you think that your car is rolling backwards. This is an optical illusion. This is when your ability to perceive reality is false. And so we have concept and we have perception, and they both can be falsified. They both can be fooled, but the odds of having an accurate picture of reality, if your concept lines up with your perception, are slightly better. So we have these two tools, feeling and seeing and thinking. So we want what we think about reality and what we feel about reality to match up. Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. We think that there is a fundamental reality. We think that there is. That's really all I can say about that. Pardon me. So these are the ways that we try to grasp reality, through perception and through concept. And if you are upset, it may be a breath of fresh air. It may feel like relief to get out of your concept and to get into your perception. But there's information in the concept as well that can be used to decide what moves to make. So if you're trying to figure out what moves to make, going back and forth between these two levels of reality can be very useful. Like, all right, I've got in my concept, it doesn't feel good anymore, and that's how you generally know that you're on the wrong track. And thinking about this, not that you necessarily need to stop thinking it along a certain track if it doesn't feel good, but I wouldn't take any action while it doesn't feel good. You may continue to think about it and eventually untie some type of snarl and come to some insight, and great. I'm not one of the ones that tells you to stay away from things that don't feel good, categorically. Sometimes there is benefit to going through things that don't feel good. And now they're going to start using the leaf blower. And so hopefully it's not too distracting, but I'm gonna drive on. We'll ignore it. The video will be as good as it is. I'll try to use my theater voice a little bit. And so hopefully we can both ignore the leaf blower and that will be fine. So you've got symbolic reality, you've got conceptual reality, perceptual reality, and fundamental reality, probably. Then there's the divisibility of reality. Now, it's very natural and very normal, and most of us, most of the time, think of ourselves as a self, and we think of the universe around us as a collection, or not even a collection. We don't really think of the universe around us. We look around and we see a book, and we see a bed, and we see a wall, and we see all these individual items, and we don't necessarily see the system that they comprise. So this is the belief in separation. This is the infinite forms that that reality can take, and that's normally where most of us start out, in this belief in separation. And so that's one way to see the world. And then in the spiritual community, and somewhat in science and in philosophy and psychology, there is this secondary story. The story that gets told in society is that we're all separate and that there are these individual things, and that's really all the more that we need to know. And then in philosophy and science and in spirituality, there tends to be a secondary story, which the second most popular story is that it's all one, right? There's one thing in the universe, and that is the universe itself. And to say that you're a part of it is really separating you from it too much. You are a feature or a function of the universe. You are a pattern that arises within the universe, but you are no more separate from the universe than your blood cells are separate from you. Like, only, only even less so, because I can take my blood cells out of my body. I can give blood at the blood bank and take my blood cells out of my body. We can't take you out of the universe. Um, we can imagine it, but we can't actually do it. And it's not actually doable. If we were to take you outside of the universe, by definition, we would have just realized that there's more universe than we thought there was. There is no outside of the universe. Um, and even if you're talking about a multiverse, then we're just playing with definitions at this point. The word universe, as I'm using it, is all that there is. And if there are multiple universes, well, then I'm talking about the thing that contains all the multiple universes. There, at some level, there is an all that there is. And that's what I mean when I say the universe for the context of this talk. So we can see all the separate things, or we can see the universe as one thing, which isn't even one thing because one is a concept. So if we just perceive the universe as a unified field, it's not even one thing because one implies the possibility of another, and there can't be two universes. So one, we drop the concept of one and just the universe. That's another way to see it, and that's kind of where spirituality and psychology or philosophy and quantum physics at this point are starting to take us. And it's good. It's good that we get taken there, because if you think that there is only all of the individual things and you don't see the connectedness of it all, then that causes problems. So if you don't have the view of the unified thing, then you may need to forget about all of the individual things for a while, and you may need to forget that there is separation, and you may need to see everything as one. It's all one. So we have these two stories. Everything is separate or it's all one. And they seem like competing stories, but I don't believe that they are. I think that you need to know that we're all one. Do we understand that we're all one? Should I spend some more time on that? If you're not convinced that we're all one, then I would search for some people that think that we're all one and get more about this, because there's plenty of it out there. So there is a story that we're all one, and there's a story that we're all separate. And the story that we're all one is generally told by people more explicitly in the spiritual and philosophical communities, and the story that we are all separate is just implied in the way that we do business. People don't really like go out of their way to mention that we're separate, because it would be like one fish going to the other fish and being like, hey, you realize we're wet. It's like, what? How much weed have you been smoking, and how did you get it lit underwater? It's not something that people generally mention, because it's just assumed that we're all separate and we go about and we do business that way. Like, this is my stuff, don't touch my stuff. So, so there's a third way to see reality. And of course, there are infinite ways to see reality, infinite ways to divide it or not divide it. But these are the three that seem the most relevant to me and are the most relevant to this discussion. And this next one is easier to perceive and more difficult to conceptualize. And that is that there is self and other. Um, but there is no, like, there are two beings in the universe. There's me and there's the universe. There's me and there's you. And you think that you're one of those. Like, if you perceive it that way, then I'm just part of all of this. All the people are part of the same thing, and you're separate from it. Now, there's a concept that it's all one. Okay, so then let's go back a little bit. Okay, again, I'm trying to take this and I'm trying to juggle these pieces, and I can only speak about one of them at once. So I'm trying to touch on a piece, touch on a piece, touch on a piece, and hopefully you can hold all of them in your mind so that a picture forms for you. And so we go back to perception and conception. Okay, we have conception and perception, two different ways of grasping fundamental reality. And so with the view that everything is separate, that's very easy to experience, right? Perception is experience reality. So it's very easy to experience a reality in which everything is separate and there are just an infinite number of things. And with a little bit of work or a lucky accident, I'm getting ahead of myself. It's easy to perceive, it's easy to conceptualize of. You can look around and be like, yep, book, notebook, pens and markers, lamp. There's lots of things. Posters, walls, the guy talking. Lots of things. Easy to conceptualize, easy to experience. Now, when it comes to everything being one, some people have a happy accident and just experience everything as one. Some people take psychedelics and experience everything as one. Some people meditate until they experience everything as one. Most of us, most of the time though, can conceptualize with a very little bit of effort. It's maybe a little bit harder or less natural to conceptualize of everything as one. But I think we've gone over explaining why it's all one enough that most of us can understand that it's all one conceptually. It's a little bit harder to experience everything as one. But it's possible. Again, psychedelics, meditation, just comes upon you through no fault of your own. Just grace. You have a little strike of grace, and you experience everything as one. So that's easy enough. It's possible to conceptualize, but it's more difficult. The reason why I bring up this third potential way to divide reality, just self and other, just me and the universe, is because it's really pretty easy to experience that. And I feel like if you're on the path and you're trying to get, if you have a concept of the universe as separate, and you're like, okay, but then you also have a concept of the universe as one, but you've had the experience of the universe as separate, and you've never had the experience of the universe as one, well, then it would be pretty natural to try to experience the universe as one. There are plenty of ways to do that. Like I've said, mushrooms, meditation, DMT, LSD, whatever. There are ways to do it. Some of them are legal. Some of them are legal in some places. But it's a little bit easier to experience the universe as two. And I think that's a step a step closer to fundamental reality. So if you're having a hard time experiencing everything as one, then maybe experience everything as two. That's what happened to me. Maybe don't try to do it on purpose, but I'm just observing and reporting my observation that when I was trying to experience everything as one, what ended up happening is that I experienced everything as one except for me. So there was this little bit of the universe that is me, and the rest of the universe that is everything else, and this vague conception that somewhere back here where I can't see it, I'm connected to the rest of it. So I'm experiencing the universe as two, me and you. But conceptually, I understand it all to be one. And then, of course, I have experienced it all as one, a few times, but it's a little bit more difficult. It requires more at this point for me to experience the universe as one. So, So now you've seen pretty much all of the pieces. You've seen that there is a conceptual layer of the universe and a perceptual layer of the universe, and we assume a fundamental layer of the universe. We've seen that the universe can be seen as separate. We've seen that it can be seen as all one. We've seen that it can be seen as self and other. Um, so we want to learn how and when to shift between these views, because none of them are true. This is a big point, big part of what I'm trying to get across here, is that when you leave the concept and the perception that everything is separate, you may get stuck in the concept and the perception that everything is unified. And neither of these things tells the whole story. It's not one, it's not many, it's both. And neither. It is what it is. It is what it is. And I can't tell you, but you can know it. And once you know it, I can tell you. Because then we'll be able to use words. We'll be able to codify our symbols to our shared experience. Sort of like, I can't explain the ocean to you if you've never encountered water. Anyway, so if you're thinking of everything as unified, it can be difficult to decide what moves to make. Because if everything is unified, then why can't I make this person be nice to that person? Because that's not you on one level. On one level, that is other. That's not self. And so it can be useful to think of self and other when you're deciding what to do. But it's not necessarily the reality. So I'm finding myself quite distracted by this leaf blower noise again. And so here we are. Better to acknowledge it. Listen to the leaf blower. Frustration, frustration, frustration. Okay, so the next point was supposed to be that it's useful to shift between these perspectives. If you want to understand reality, then you have to learn to hold all of the perspectives and not just to be like, oh, that thing that I thought before was wrong and now this thing is right. No, that thing that you thought before was incomplete and this thing that you think now is incomplete. And if you can integrate them into one view, then great. Sort of like my video that the universe is essentially formless but never without form, starts to integrate the two views of the universe as one thing and as infinite things. So it is one thing with infinite forms within it, arising and passing away. And that's an integration of the view of the universe as separate and as unified. I haven't quite integrated self and other into that. The idea that there are only two beings in the universe, and one of them is me and one of them is you, I haven't integrated fully. So maybe you'll be able to integrate it. Maybe I'll be able to integrate it later. But the point is, you hold these views, you hold all of them, and then you integrate them. You don't abandon one and cling to the other. Okay? So take flat Earth. Not flat Earth, but take the idea that the Earth is flat, and the idea that the Earth is round. You kind of want to hold both of these, and we do this. We automatically do this because we perceive that the Earth is flat, and we know that the Earth is round through math and science and certain observable things having to do with, horizons and ships going over. Doesn't matter. Figure it out for yourself. The point is, if you think that the Earth is round, and you're like, well, then I will pour water on it, and it will roil away. You're like, no, you won't, because on some level the Earth is flat. Like, it's flat for practical purposes. To a human who's itty bitty compared to the size of the Earth, it's flat enough to use it as a surface to put things on. Stuff's not going to fall off of it. Like if I told you that the surface of this, we're going to serve dinner on a globe, you'd be like, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, so in reality, we unconsciously know that the Earth is flat through perception, but we understand that the Earth is round. You see, the Earth isn't really flat, it's round, but we know that it's flat when we walk around on it. Because it's flat enough. Parts of it are flat enough for doing things that require a flat surface. Like you can play basketball on it. You can level a pool table on it. Stuff like that. So it's good to be able to shift between the perceptions in order to use the one that is more useful. And I think the end of this is to integrate these different perceptions into one perception, but I don't know that we have the language to explain it if we do that. Sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. It's all well and good. So, practical application being the final point. What do you do with this information? What do you do with the information that it's all one? What do you do with the information that it's not just all one, but it's also separate? But it's not, like, separate's too strong of a word, but it's this one formless essence with infinite forms, and never, there is no form of formlessness. The formless doesn't exist without being in form. It is form, it's just essentially formless. There's self and there's other, because if there wasn't self and there wasn't other, then I would just stop all the wars right now. It would just stop. I would just stop fighting if it was all me. But it's not all me on that level. On that level, there's me and there's the people who are fighting. And I can't stop them from fighting because they're not me, they're them. And that's just the way that it is. And so, if you want to have the whole truth, the practical application is that if you want to have the whole truth, you've got to hold these different things. And it's also to shift between them depending on, like, if you are confused or upset, maybe shift perspectives. Maybe try to think about it as a system instead of trying to think about it for your individual self. But if you're thinking of it as a system and you don't know what to do, then maybe stop thinking of it as a system and be a little bit more selfish and be like, well, what's good for me? Fuck everybody else for a minute. What's good for me? And maybe that will tell you what's right to do. And so, but then switch back to your system perspective. Be like, okay, so that's what I've decided I'm going to do because it's good for me. Does it hurt the system? And if the answer is no, then you got a green light, right? If the answer is yes, well, then you've got some more thinking to do. But at the end of the day, I said I was going to touch on practical application. I didn't say I was going to tell you what's wrong and what's right. That's for you to decide. I know what's wrong and what's right for me. And I believe and I trust you to know what's wrong and what's right for you. So all I really wanted to do here was take this concept out and juggle it and display it for you. And hopefully it's formed an image in your mind. I also wanted to do it in less than 30 minutes, and it's 33 minutes at this point. So I have marginally failed at my secondary task, but I blame the weed eaters or leaf blowers or whatever it is that's going on out there. So let me wrap it all up. Let me take these pieces out of the air, put them back in the package, and tie a little bow on it. We talked about truth and concept. Don't forget that all of these words that I've said have just been words. And if they didn't ring true, then they didn't ring true. If they didn't land, then let them go. And if they resonated, then great. If you want them, keep them. If you don't want them, let them go. We talked about the symbolic way, the conceptual way of grasping reality, the way to perceive reality through our perception, and that we can both be fooled by either one of these, so that we use both of these hands to try to grab fundamental reality, which we think exists, maybe, probably. We perceive reality, we think about reality, and maybe there's a fundamental reality. We talked about the infinite forms, we talked about the two stories, the one in society and the one in many of your spiritual communities, where one story is that everything is separate, one is that everything is one. And I think the and then I've got my story where there's me and there's the entire universe, and we're the two beings. It's me and you and the whole universe. And you're the whole universe. Maybe you think I'm the whole universe, but I think you're the whole universe in that third story. And we talked about the idea is not to pick one of these views, but to hold all of them and potentially integrate them into all one view. But if not, just expand your consciousness enough to hold all of these views. And so now you know what goes on inside the mind of the Wolfman. And we touched on practical application, but at the end of the day, look at your situation with this potentially new information and decide. So, may your hearts, hopefully you've got a little more clarity. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. It's been interesting. Hopefully you're happy. You're at least as happy as you were when you started watching this. May your hearts and minds be happy and clear. May you find satisfaction in all your endeavors. And may you find ultimate satisfaction